Vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance was interviewed by Dana Bash. I first became aware of J.D. Vance not when his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, became wildly popular, but rather in the aftermath of the train derailment at East Palestine, Ohio. When my wife and I were first married, there was a not dissimilar train derailment in my little town. I saw state, local, and private interests converge in cleaning up the spill and returning things to normal. So, last year, I watched as the Biden administration fumbled and bumbled the most obvious winning pass in history, and I knew exactly why Vance was so upset. The man was clear-eyed and expressive, and I was instantly impressed. In the last year, I don't think I have seen any more clearly spoken representative of the people's values than Vance, with the possible exception of Byron Donalds. While I was on board with Trump from the moment the fake indictments came down, when Vance was added to the ticket, I became excited to vote. And so, when I saw Vance was being interviewed by Dana Bash, the same woman that had just spoon-fed Kamala Harris all that malarkey, I knew I would have to weigh in. The main meat of Sunday's interview was made up from the fallout of last week's debate and the viral Save the Cats meme that took the internet by storm 2 weeks ago. Bash correctly notes that Vance was on the forefront of the Springfield meme war, and tried to scold him for all the cacophony in the public discourse that had sprung out from that. Vance replied, "First of all, what's putting the residents of Springfield at risk, which was a town completely ignored by the American media until Trump and I started surfacing some of these concerns, is that they can't afford housing, they can't afford health care. The schools have been overwhelmed, the hospitals have been overwhelmed, and they're overwhelmed because Kamala Harris allowed 20,000 Haitian migrants to get dropped into some small Ohio town of about 40,000 people. It's completely overwhelmed the services. Now you ask why I have talked out about some of the things that I'm talking about. Just let me say this. My constituents have brought approximately a dozen separate concerns to me. 10 of them are verifiable and confirmable, and a couple of them I talk about because my constituents are telling me firsthand they're seeing these things. So I have two options, Dana. First, I can ignore them, which is what the American media has done for years to this community, or I can actually talk about what people are telling me. And of course, many of the things that the media says are completely baseless have actually since been confirmed. From that quote, one of the first things that struck out to me was the actual numbers that were involved in. This is a town of 60,000 people. 20,000 of whom, that's 1/3 of the town has been dropped there in the last few years. However, Bash went on to try to double down, saying there was no evidence of any of Vance's claims, and quoted several Springfield and Ohio state authorities on the subject. But Vance wouldn't back down, repeatedly pointing out that the evidence he was presenting was the actual testimony of Ohioans. It's just like the media to ignore normal people while never stopping to question the ruling elite. He went on, "I'm talking to my constituents, and I'm hearing terrible things about what's going on in Springfield, and Kamala Harris's open border policies have caused these problems. The hospitals are overwhelmed, the schools are overwhelmed, the local services are completely overwhelmed. You have people who can't afford housing, homelessness has gone up, murders are up by 81% because of what Kamala Harris has allowed to happen in this small community. I'm going to keep talking about that. Now, of course, we can criticize violence, and we can also talk about the problems that are happening in Springfield, and we should be able to do both of these things simultaneously." In this whole interview, Bash was shameless. After lying and fawning and soft-shoeing over Harris and Waltz, she spent this entire segment trying to disparage real American testimony from real Americans in suffering. She laser-focused on a cat meme and missed the bigger picture, that the memes are there because people refuse to talk about humans, but can't stop talking about cats. Well, that's how it looks from my back porch. Let me know what you thought in the comments section, and be sure to like this video and share it around to folks. Give us a subscribe while you're at it, and we'll be back tomorrow with more news from the back porch.